Hello, this is Dr. Scott Conrad, mothersraisingsons.com on lesson 2 of our prom series. So now, for most boys, asking a girl out is one of the scariest things in the world. I talk to a lot of teenage boys. Heck, I talk to a lot of adult men. And they'll tell you, if I could just pick up my sword and go charging face first at this dragon and go one-on-one against the dragon, I'd be okay with that. But sometimes having to talk to a woman, that is just like trip hammer heart scary. Now, I'm actually not totally sure why that's the case, but it just does seem to be the case. It's that fear of rejection just kind of lingers in there and gets lodged in, and I'm not 100% sure why we've been doing this for generations, but as far as I've been able to tell from all the people I've talked to across the ages, this has evidently been a truth that has spanned the generations. From my grandparents' day down to my grandson's day, it's a truth, and I'm sure will continue to be a truth. So what do you do? How do you help coach your son in talking to girls? Now, hopefully you've helped him be comfortable talking to women in general, and you in particular, of course. But as he learns to talk to girls, something like prom, and this is something you might want to talk to your son about, the prom is a big deal. In fact, the prom date for some percentage of girls, and it seems to be a fairly large percentage from what I've been able to determine, certainly it was back in my day and maybe in your day too, that prom night is one of the biggest, most socially significant days of the year. And very often, guys have who their fantasy date is, the person they would most like to go with, and a lot of girls have their fantasy date, the guy that she would most like to have ask her. Now, of course, this is already an existing romance, and your son has a girlfriend. Presumably, he'll be going with his girlfriend. And one of the things I certainly suggest if you have a son who might be 6 months or 12 months or certainly a couple of years away from prom, is ideally he should not be setting prom dates that far out, because certainly when you're talking about teenage relationships, you never know how long they're going to last. It was very common for relationships to last maybe 6 or 8 months in the circles that I ran in. Some of my friends had relationships that went on for years. Some of them had relationships that would only last 2 or 3 months at a time. So imagine if you made plans way back in September or October or the year before to go to prom, and then you kind of have that issue. So how do you help your son talk to a girl? What advice might you give? Now, typically, of course, if there's a father around, he might ask his dad. He's more likely to be asking friends. But he might just kind of be wallowing. And so this might be a conversation you might want to initiate. And how do you ask a girl out to the prom? Well, one of the challenges you may have is because it's such a high-stakes event, and it is kind of a truism in many social circles that if you ask one girl out, kind of all of the friends are off limits. Because certainly if you have Sally and Jane are good friends with one another, and Jane knows you asked Sally, and Sally said no, and now you ask Jane, now she kind of feels like she's playing second fiddle to Sally, which may actually be the case. Likewise, if your son asks someone out, and there's someone else that she would rather have ask her out, then she might be kind of wanting to wait to see if this other guy is going to ask, and only if he asks somebody else and gets another date will she then say yes to your son. And so all of these interesting social dynamics that your son will have to be ready for dealing with, because it's just going to be part of the truth. And if that does happen to him where she's, well, I'll need some time to think about it, he can give her like a reasonable deadline. All right, well, if you can let me know by Friday or let me know by Monday, so that he has time to ask somebody else out. Now, here's a way that he can initiate a conversation about the prom to kind of try to find out a little bit more about who she is, where she is, and whether or not she already has a date. Now here's the idea. In fact, let me confer with my notes here to make sure I don't miss a key piece. So rather than just come out and ask, he starts a conversation about the prom. Now, starting a conversation about the prom starts laying out sort of what he's thinking. He says, well, prom's coming up, and I've been thinking about what to do on prom night. Going to get a tuxedo, of course, and, go out to dinner. And so part of what I was thinking is maybe, this particular restaurant, for him to have a particular restaurant in mind that he might actually take a date to. So he's checked out the prices, and he knows if there's a parking fee. He knows how to get there. He already has transportation arranged if he doesn't drive. So he has some idea what he's looking at. And if there's an after prom, he's already hopefully decided if he's looking at the after prom. And maybe even just says, like, I'm kind of looking at the after prom, trying to decide there. What do you think? What are your prom plans? What do you think would be a good idea? And have a conversation about the prom. Now, it may come up that she already has a date, or it may come up that she's waiting for a date, or she's waiting for someone to ask her. And it kind of gives them an opportunity to have a discussion about the prom without just coming right out and just opening the conversation with, "Hey, Sally, I was thinking of going to the prom with you. Are you available?" Or, "Hey, Jane, would you please go to the prom with me?" Or something like that. That's pretty high stakes. But he can open the conversation talking about prom rather than opening the conversation asking her to go out. Now, here's one of the things, of course, he's going to have to know. If he is interested in this girl, if he wants to ask her out, if during the conversation she seems like she might even potentially be interested, or even just not interested, that she doesn't express a disinterest, then he should ask her. And he should ask her at that conversation. And if he doesn't very often, then he's going to have that trip hammer thing going on. He's already got the conversation going. He's already got some back and forth going. He already knows that at least he hasn't had that door slammed on him yet. And now is the time to ask. So this is Scott Conway, mothersraisingsons.com, just helping out the moms a little bit to help out our sons in prom season. Thank you very much. We'll see you back for lesson number 2.